minutes and let people trickle in, and then we'll get started. Again, thanks for your time, and we'll see you soon. Thanks everyone for being here. We're going to get started because we have quite a bit of information to cover tonight, and we want to make sure that we can get to your questions. So first, thank you so much for your time. I know a Thursday night, there's plenty of other places you could be, but we're glad you're here with us to start talking about this park site. My name is Bonnie Shelton, and I am the Communications and Marketing Superintendent for Boise Parks and Rec, and public outreach fits under that role. So I get to help with a lot of really fun and interesting projects, including building out master plans for park sites. So we're glad you're here. We're interested in hearing from you on what you'd like to see. Joining me tonight are two members of our team, and I want to introduce them so that you can get to know them a little bit better, because you'll be hearing from them a lot. So first, I see you, Kelly Burrows. So why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little background on your work with the city?
Yeah, my name is Kelly, and I am a landscape architect. I've been working for the Parks Department for 15 years. So I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of great park projects. And I'm looking forward to working with you on developing a master plan and then leading to construction on this Cary Lane Park site.
Thanks, Kelly. And Trevor, if you want to quickly introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, my name is Trevor Kessner. I've been with the city of Boise for 4 years now. I am a parks planner with the department. I've been a land use planner for the last 10 years, but this park planning gig is pretty great. I really enjoy planning for new parks and refreshing the parks that we have. And I love the Boise park system, and it's just a great job. And thanks for the introduction, Bonnie.
Yeah, I will say we get to do a lot of the fun stuff in Parks and Rec, and everybody knows it. So first, just a couple of housekeeping items. Again, my name's Bonnie. I'm going to help moderate, and I'll be watching the chat and the Q&A function throughout the night if you do have questions or comments, so that we can incorporate those in the meeting. We've got about 35, 40 people joining us. So unfortunately, we can't go around and have you all introduce yourselves, but we do want to have that two-way conversation. So please use the chat and the Q&A for that. We are recording this meeting for anyone that can't be here. They can watch it in the future and get all of this great background and information. And I do want to mention, going forward, the best way to learn more about next steps for this project is, one, we're going to be adding everyone from this first meeting to a contact email list. So we'll be sending you updates that will opt you in for. And then also the Cary Lane Park site website is really where we'll be posting a lot of updated information, next steps. So I'd recommend bookmarking that if you plan to follow us all along throughout this process. Let's dive in. I have agreed to run the slideshow, so bear with me. You'd think after 2 years of doing Zoom and Teams, it would be so much easier, but I always get a little nervous that it's not going to work. So I'm going to kick it over to Kelly to start us off. And Kelly, just let me know if there are certain things that you want me to point out, or some other additional items that you need.
Okay, thank you.
And let me know that you can see my screen.
Perfect. Yep, the vicinity map's up.
Great.
So this is a vicinity map, just if you hadn't had a chance to know where the Gary Lane Park site is, this kind of gives you an idea. Up in, let's see, seems like the screen split a little bit.
Does that make it a little better?
Yeah, that's better.
That's better. Oh, there we go.
So on this plan, at the top left, kind of give you an idea of where we're at. The top left of that map is River Glen Junior High School. And you can see just basically from this plan, you know, there's no other schools or parks in this general area. And just off the map to the bottom is State Street. While we're looking at this, you can see if you've ever been by River Glen Junior High School, they have 4 tennis courts there, 4 basketball courts, a couple baseball fields and a track. That's great public space, but you know, it isn't available during school hours to the general public to use. The Gary Lane Park site, it's 1.5 acres. And on the north side, we have Toby Court. And to the south, we have the Jehovah's Witnesses property. If you've been by there, it's an undeveloped site. There are some mature trees there. There's a few nice silver maples, but there are a few noxious trees that we would probably remove as part of this project as we develop the site. On the north side, the Palisades Edition HOA has a nice pathway connection from Toby Court to Gary Lane. And if you've been out there, you'll remember that this whole park property has a wood fence that goes all the way around it except for the frontage on Gary Lane. I'm gonna go to the next slide, Bonnie. So Skyline Park is an example of an existing park that's about the same size of being 1.5 acres. And this is kind of typical of what you see as a neighborhood park in the city of Boise. All of the parking is on street. There isn't a dedicated parking lot for this park site. It has a small shelter with a table under it. There's a playground. And this park has a half-court basketball court. And that's kind of typical of what you'd see at a smaller neighborhood park of this size. It isn't a destination park for, you know, for a large area. It's more of for the adjacent neighbors and meant to be for one that you'd walk to and enjoy. Let's go to the next slide. So as we start to look at potential amenities for the park site, here's a few that are listed. We could install a playground, a skateboard feature, a shelter, potential sport courts or basketball, volleyball, and bocce ball. We do have basketball courts up at the junior high, but we could potentially put in a basketball court here. Outdoor exercise pavilion, horseshoe pit, community garden, drinking fountain with a dog bowl. And definitely a main feature is just having the open space that a park provides. We had a generous allocation of $700,000 to develop the park. And that's what kicked off this master plan process so that we could move forward after adopting a master plan and be able to start construction this year. Let's go to the next slide. Then with this site, there's a few additional considerations. With parking, generally our parking's on street. There isn't any on-street parking available on Gary Lane. So potentially we could work with the adjacent Jehovah's Witnesses to potentially ask for additional parking there. For whatever development that we decide to go with, we'll need to provide accessible parking stalls. So as we look at concepts, you'll see that a couple ADA accessible parking stalls are called out. And with our preliminary conversations with Ada County Highway District, they're directing us to have all of our parking come off of Toby Court, nothing come off of Gary Lane. Typically, we don't have a restroom at parks this size. We do provide porta potties, and they're expensive, but at the same time, depending on what direction we decide to go with the master plan, it could be an option here. There are definitely pros and cons to having a dedicated restroom. The site would potentially be available for dog off leash hours. Typically, a fenced dog park, our minimum size of a dog park is 1 acre. And generally they're split up between shy dogs and more social dogs. But there's definitely potential for off-leash hours at this location. And currently the name of the park hasn't been chosen. I don't know, Bonnie, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah, we have asked city leadership for direction on that piece. And I know we've had several people reach out with some suggestions based on the history of the area. So the update I have is our arts and history department is kind of looking into the history of the area to see if there's a good name. And I've passed on the suggestions that we've received. So thank you to those of you who have sent them. And we'll just keep you up to date as we learn more kind of about what that process will look like. And then Kelly, before we move on, we've gotten a couple questions that I want to see if you can address. And I'm going to go back on the slide deck. Can you give a little bit of a background on kind of a cost estimate for some of these features so people can understand maybe what a playground would cost versus a shelter, just so they can see how those would add up?
Yeah, so I've put together 3 concepts, and definitely these are just conceptual ideas. And with each concept, we can build the concept for the 700,000. And when we look at each concept, I'll talk about what the costs are with each amenity. And also, when I give the examples, there's always the potential to go smaller or bigger with a playground or the facility, so that we have flexibility in making it what we want it to be.
And one more question that Robin shared was related to, I think it was Robin. There's been a couple questions about the possibility of a different type of sport court, like a pickleball court. Is that something that would be considered for a neighborhood park?
So with pickleball courts, we typically try to put those in community parks. They are so well loved that people want to play pickleball, as soon as the park opens until it closes. And with the park facility, we need to be good neighbors. So whatever we propose, we want to make sure we don't propose something that brings, maybe a larger crowd to the park site where we don't have parking for it, or potentially something that could be too noisy for the neighbors. So this site probably wouldn't be a good fit for pickleball courts.
I've made a note of that request though, and we'll be cataloging all of this as we share with our team and with leadership as well. So there's been a couple in the chat seconding that, and just know that I've taken that request down, and we'll log that for the meeting for sure to consider going forward. And then let's get moving forward in the presentation, Kelly, because I know there's some other questions in the chat, but I think you'll address a couple of them. And then please know I've seen your question, and we'll get to it after the presentation ends. We should have plenty of time.
So here's concept number one, and this is pretty minimal concept. And this is mostly focused on open space where you have passive recreation, where you'd be able to show up, you know, be able to throw a Frisbee or play catch. And this lends itself well to dog off leash hours. You know, it's open space where you're able to go out and enjoy the open space, and there aren't any dedicated amenities here. There's a walking path that gives an additional connection from Toby Court back to Gary Lane. Each concept that we look at will have 2 ADA parking stalls. And if you see where Toby Court is right below where the name is, those indicate 2 ADA parking spaces. And as we work with ACHD, that concept will be modified to meet their requirements. Also, with all of these concepts, we'll have to reach out to the HOA to make some modifications to the fencing that's currently on site. Because right now it's all fenced off and we don't have access to the park site. So with typically when we plan for a park site, we factor in 200,000 per acre for green up. And what this does is it allows us to do all the demo work of the site, amend the existing topsoil, and put in a complete irrigation system and pump system for that. Then with all the trees, sod, parking, and hardscape. So this out of all the concepts, there's if your number one choice is to have open space and your second choice was a restroom, this concept would be able to account for a restroom being built. Typically they're about 300,000 to install a restroom in a park. Let's look at option 2 or concept 2. Same as the first concept. It has the 2 accessible parking stalls right off of Toby Court. This one includes a large shelter. The shelters are 20 by 24 feet and they fit like 4 tables underneath. None of the facilities in a neighborhood park would be reservable. So this is just first come, first serve use. And this concept includes a playground. And we'll have a slide of what a typical playground would look like. Do we have that slide next, Bonnie, of the playground?
Yep.
Yeah, here's an idea of a traditional concept for a playground. This is a playground that we're going to be building at another neighborhood park called Pine Grove. That's over by the connector in Maple Grove. And this size of a playground would be about 300,000 to install. Let's go back up. Back to the concept, you have a playground with a walking path all the way around it. This gives the kids a place to ride their bikes in this general area. And also that helps to not have irrigation overspray into the playground. All of our playgrounds that we're doing today have an accessible surface material. We've gone away from using bark because it's really labor intensive to go out there and make sure it complies with the playground requirements. So this would have a nice surfacing under it. If you've been over to Castle Hills, this last year we put in that same surfacing under the playground over there. And this concept, you know, would contain standard park amenities like bike racks, benches, and trash receptacles. And with a shelter, we'd probably want to, in playground, we'd want to put in a drinking fountain in this option too. Shelter's about 60,000. And so with the shelter and playground and green up costs, we would be able to develop this with our $700,000 budget.
Kelly, we got a question related to dog off leash. If there's amenities like a playground and a shelter, would dog off leash be an option to consider with the neighborhood, including with option one, which was the open space, I guess is what the question was.
Yeah, we have a number of parks that have off-leash hours that have these same standard amenities in it. And we haven't had any issues with conflicts with the off-leash hours. They've worked out really well. You know, currently with this concept, the amenities are centered in the park, so it's not right up against any adjacent neighbor. But if we wanted to have a stronger focus with, you know, larger open space, maybe we would adjust what this looks like and maybe pull the amenities, you know, closer to the cul-de-sac so there's more open space.
And then another question before we move on to the third concept. With both of these that you've shown, would the Gary Lane side be fenced, or would that just be dependent on the determined park use, or how is that evaluated?
So typically our parks don't have fencing in it. Usually when you see a fence along a property line, it's the adjacent neighbors. So this would be typical of all of our parks. You know, we definitely wouldn't want to have the playground be any closer than what's shown here to Gary Lane. If we went closer, then we'd definitely put, you know, fencing up around the playground just to ensure kids' safety.
We've got a couple more questions about fences, but I'm going to hold those until you're done with your presentation, just FYI. Are you good for me to move on to the third concept?
Yeah, let's look at the third concept. And here's another concept that includes a couple different amenities. This one includes a small skate park and a fitness pod. Over at Bowler Park, it's a brand new park that we just recently opened. It has these same two amenities where it's a small skate feature and a fitness pod. And let's look at those photos. Yeah, here's a picture of Bowler Park. You can see this right in the foreground is the skate park and the features that are included. Then right behind it is another example of a fitness pod. And here, this picture here is one that we're putting in at Franklin Park this spring. The skate park would be, you know, close to $250,000 to construct, and a fitness pod is around $200,000. So with all these concepts, it's just an idea of give us a starting point to talk about. We could definitely add more features here, but if we added more, like with this concept, we would need to shrink the size of the skate park and the size of the fitness pod, and maybe we do a smaller shelter to be able to maybe incorporate a smaller playground. But we have flexibility in what gets included in the master plan. And with the master plan, maybe we aren't able to build everything this summer, and maybe there's an amenity that could be phased at a later date. Neighborhood associations have the ability to apply for neighborhood improvement grants, and the neighborhood association could apply for, you know, a future amenity if we aren't able to build it this summer. So these concepts just give us a starting point of what the space can accommodate and what we'd be able to build with our budget.
Thanks, Kelly. And we've got quite a few questions, so I'm just going to start going through those so that you can help answer. Thank you to everyone for putting these in so that we can address them. First up, about fencing, Dylan lives on the property on the north side of the proposed park. What would happen with the fence on that side?
So the HOA owns the fence. So we would have to have a conversation with the HOA to see what they would approve. it would be nice if there was a seamless transition between the landscape of the HOA property in the park, but that isn't our fence, so we don't have any ownership of it.
Thanks, Kelly. And then next question, and we also got this before the meeting too, from a neighbor. What about lighting at the park? Can you talk about how we address that, and if there's plans for that?
So our parks are only open during daylight hours. So from dusk till dawn, they'll be closed, and we don't light the parks. If we had a restroom, there's permit requirements to have a light on the restroom, but it would be closed at night also. So parks don't have lighting at night because they're closed.
I'm seeing a couple comments asking for more walking paths. Can you talk about, just reiterating with these concepts, they are just concepts. What can you play around with? What different kinds of amenities could we put in or expand based on the budget, but also hearing from what the community would like to see, like more paths in the park?
Yeah, so like if there were, say you like concept 2 and you wanted to have a playground and a shelter, we could master plan in that additional pathway that was shown on concept 1. And when we go out to bid to construct, we would have that as an add alternate so that we have some flexibility in knowing how that we're able to build it, have enough money to build it. And if we don't have enough money to build it, that's where we could go after that phased approach where the neighborhood could apply for a future grant to be able to fund that additional sidewalk.
And we've gotten a couple different questions or comments about parking. Some saying it would be nice to not have parking take up the park and people walk or bike. Others asking if there's an opportunity for more parking to be added. Can you just talk a little bit more in depth on the size of this park? Obviously, if we added parking, that would take away from the park footprint, and just kind of the recommendation from a design standpoint that you would make.
Yeah, with the site being so small and with a limited budget, we definitely don't want to have to develop a parking lot at this site and go with our typical standard of parking on the streets. But at the same time, we want to be a good neighbor. We're just starting the master plan process, and with that, we would definitely like to approach the adjacent church and ask them if parking would be available on their property. We'd have to enter into an agreement, and that could solve a lot of the parking issues. And if that was able to happen, then we would have a pathway from their parking lot over to the amenities that are added into the park.
Thank you. Another vote for a pathway around the park, just to add some additional walking, just FYI, since I'm monitoring these. And then we got a comment from Anthony talking about the Skyline Park example that you mentioned, and pointing out that that park serves a neighborhood that has several other parks nearby, or at least outdoor recreational spaces. I'm not sure that you have a good answer for this, Kelly or Trevor, but they're asking if this is the only park they'll be getting for the amount of people that live in their neighborhood. And I'm wondering if that's just getting at, is this our chance to get in everything that we really want and need? Or do we see that there's other opportunities in this area?
I'm not aware of another park site. We recently built Magnolia Park, but that's a little ways away. And that's over adjacent to Shadow Hills Elementary School. And the other closest park to here is Castle Hills. So we're right between the middle of those two parks. And it's not very good access for someone to be able to walk to any of those parks from this location. But Trevor, are you aware of any additional park sites in this area?
Gary, Gary Lane's site first of all, it's a win for this neighborhood because if you know the history of this site, it was first it might have been a park and then it might have been a fire station, and now we're back to a final decision that it will be a park. So that's a win for this neighborhood. Close by within a 10-minute walk or within a 15-minute walk, there are no additional park sites or city-owned parcels available for future parks. I will make mention that the city council approved and adopted the master pathways plan for the entire city on Tuesday evening, and it provides for a lot of potential future pathways that would connect this Gary Lane Park site and a lot of other amenities and open space in the Northwest area. But to speak that directly, I want to assure folks that this is not the only shot that they'll have at getting a park. This is considered the neighborhood park. It's a win for the neighborhood. So we just want to make sure that we do right by the neighborhood folks and put in what they think is appropriate here. And as always, we are always looking at our level of service for the entire city, and Northwest is definitely a place that we're looking for additional amenities and space.
Yeah, and to play off that, Erica, I saw your comment about considering everything that's around this, including the schools, Optimist, Magnolia. Of course, we'll certainly take that into account. We don't want to have, recurring amenities. We try to spread things out so that there's different things for people to experience. And we've gotten a couple of questions in the chat and in the Q&A about how this decision will be made on the amenities. And rest assured, this is step one. This is the start of the conversation. We're logging everything that you're saying. We're going to do a quick vote at the end, but by no means is that hard and fast like decision made tonight. We're planning on coming back to you with a survey that'll have some more in-depth questions. We really just wanted to kick off the conversation tonight. So we'll get more into that toward the end of the meeting when we talk about next steps. But yes, Trevor.
Thanks, Bonnie. I just saw in the chat, and it reminded me also, there is property that the city owns north of Hill Road on Pierce Park Lane. It's not a large parcel, probably not similar in size to this one, but we are looking at potential amenities at that location as well. Maybe a trailhead with a parking lot or a bathroom, but none of that has been decided yet. But good catch, that comes from Anthony S., who reminded me that the city does own property on Pierce Park north of Hill Road. Thank you.
Every once in a while, something weird happens and I then get nervous and try to unmute or something. They're trying to think of what the other question was that I was just going to touch on.
Is there a question about the splash pad?
Yeah, yes, thank you. Splash pad, is that being considered? I know, Kelly, you have some background on that because we've already kind of talked about it.
So Magnolia Park, it's a little ways away. That was built a couple of years ago, and they just did the green up phase where it's open space and a playground and a parking lot, sorry. But future amenities is a restroom, playground, and a splash pad at that location. Typically in a small park like this, we wouldn't do a splash pad. They're really popular, and it would draw in a lot of vehicles or people wanting to use that amenity, and they're expensive and have a lot of maintenance associated with them. So at our smaller park sites, we typically wouldn't look at a splash pad as an option.
And someone asked this in the chat and I answered, but if there are dog off leash hours, mutt mitts are put in, what is included in like a traditional always in a park, like as far as benches, trash cans, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so you'd have we'd have all those amenities: trash cans, benches, bike racks, mutt mitts for sure, because we know we'll need to have that amenity. Those get filled regularly by staff. And probably one we haven't mentioned too much is a drinking fountain. We could definitely have a drinking fountain there.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm trying to scroll through and see what I've missed. Trevor, if you've seen anything too, feel free to chime in. Thank you all
Yeah.
for the great questions.
These are great questions, and I'm actually typing and trying to answer questions as well.
It's not easy.
Yeah. So I'm just typing a response again in response to the question about parking. Typically, parks of this size, we would usually just see either 2 to 5 stalls, because there's typically, I mean, I know that there's no parking on Gary Lane, but as Kelly mentioned in talks with Ada County Highway District, the driveway spacing for the Toby Court on the west side of the street, entrance to that subdivision, that's the driveway. And then the Jehovah's Witnesses parking lot on the south of the site, those driveways are too close together that ACHD would allow any kind of vehicular access to the site off of Gary Lane. So that's why we would prefer, well, ACHD would prefer that any vehicular access would take from Toby Court through that neighborhood. But again, we want to be good neighbors to the folks that live there already. And I'm not sure how the residents of Toby Court would feel about additional traffic coming through their neighborhood to park in the park. So those are just considerations that we all have to, observe. And yeah, as far as like parking for a park this size, it's either 2 to 5 parking stalls or none at all, like folks have mentioned, because it's a neighborhood park. We want to encourage folks to walk to it or bike to it. And if there's no parking available, then it kind of encourages you to get up and get out and go for a walk. So.
And then Stephen, thank you for this question. Kelly or Trevor, I'm not sure who's best to take this on, but with future water issues looming, is there any consideration either for this park or future Boise City parks to begin more water-wise landscaping, including grass type?
Yeah, definitely. Like with option 1, we have that walking path, if you remember, where it was open space, the walking path. Then there were trees between the walking path and the adjacent fences. Like that would be a perfect design where between the property line and the walking path, where we don't plant grass, we just plant trees and shrubs and have it on drip so that we have more efficient irrigation. And then, we could do plantings that are more conducive to wildlife and also have an opportunity for a pollinator garden. But with all of the technology that we use for irrigation design, we're using the best that's out there, and they have soil sensors that control the amount of water that's being applied so that we don't overwater, where if we have irrigation breaks, the system shuts down so that we can, conserve that resource.
Thanks, Kelly. I know water use is certainly something that is very top of mind for everything that we do in parks and recreation. Someone also mentioned, is this a site that could be included in our pesticide reduction program? And that's certainly something that we're going to be expanding. I don't know if anyone saw, there was an article in Boise Dev just this week with updates on kind of that program if you've never heard of it, but really cool work that our team is doing to try and reduce the number of pesticides in our parks and find other ways to keep them healthy and up to the expectation level that you all really want to see in your parks. I mean, that's where we take our families and spend time outside. So definitely something that we're thinking about for every new park that we build. So thank you for also bringing that up and keeping it top of mind. Couple things. Erica mentioned right now the contractor who mows this land has to park on Gary Lane in the bike lane. So just a note that some access should be provided for park maintenance vehicles, just something to note. And then Kenny wants to talk a little bit more about fencing. Would we ever consider a fence on the Gary Lane side, just because that is a busy road? And if especially there was dog off leash hours or with a playground there, is that something that we could potentially do considering this site and where it sits?
Yeah, definitely. Just when I throw out the idea of what we typically have done at other sites, that doesn't mean it can't happen here. Any ideas that you have, we can definitely incorporate into the plan.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we want to hear what you guys are interested in seeing. We're going to be coming back to you for additional feedback. again, we'll cover next steps toward the end of this meeting because we want to make sure we get to all of your questions. Dylan said, I like the pollinator garden idea. So maybe we try to mix in some different materials or native plants. Kelly, just a note for you. And then Adam asked, what's the success rate on neighborhood boards receiving capital improvement grants for parks, or the neighborhood grants that you mentioned, Kelly? Honestly, pretty good, right? I mean, we work really closely with those neighborhood associations and have had great success. I'm thinking about parks in West Boise and Southwest Boise, like with Molinar. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I haven't been involved with those in a number of years, but I know a lot of park amenities have been built through that program. So they do have an annual budget. You have to compete against other projects, but there is an annual budget that you're able to apply for.
Yeah, and I know that the neighborhood associations in this area are very involved, and I work through my job closely with a lot of them. So I would say if it's something that would help get you something that you want for this park that maybe, like Kelly said, doesn't fit in this initial budget, that's definitely something to consider making sure is in the master plan so that it can be applied for in the future. Taking a look here. Oh, we'll probably get to this a little later too, but oh, wait, I'm going to hold on your question about timeline, Robin, and I'm going to go to this question about crossing Gary Lane because we got a couple questions about this before the meeting as well. Trevor, can you help just kind of talk a little bit about adding crosswalks, crosswalk availability, how we work with ACHD on that, and kind of what our process would be addressing crossing Gary Lane to get to this site?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bonnie. So there is an existing protected crosswalk that is north of this location. It is put forth closer to the school, ideally, because, you know, and we all know how the relationship goes with ACHD. You know, Ada County Highway District owns the roadways and they make the decisions about facilities that are put in the right of way. They work with us really well as far as like the city requests and you know, our pathways connection, not pathways connections, but like park connections to try and basically connect everybody in a very safe manner. So ACHD traffic engineers would actually need to examine and vet the request to put in an additional crosswalk. There's different levels of crosswalk. You could just have a painted crosswalk. You could have a protected crosswalk, which would basically have like the flashing lights above. But again, Ada County Highway District traffic engineers would need to vet that request because there is already one protected crosswalk on Gary Lane north of this site, closer to the school. They may not allow an additional crosswalk because it might be too close together. Also, the crosswalk will probably require ACHD to have us do a cost share, and that would eat into the budget that we have for this park's amenities. So I'm just, you know, we work really well with ACHD, but unfortunately we don't have control over where to place those crosswalks. Agreed. A crosswalk would be nice at this location. Again, ACHD would ultimately make that decision.
But I will say we've heard from several neighbors via email about this, and we've noted it in our park kind of documents and notes going forward. So please know it's on our radar. We hear you. And it's definitely something that we can start the conversation with ACHD about as this planning process and construction moves forward. So thanks for bringing that up, the couple of you that have done that tonight as well. There was a question that I just marked. Sorry, guys, I had it right in front of me.
Ages of use of amenities.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. You're on it.
Like on the playground that's shown, that's for 2 to 12-year-olds. So those are the typical ages. Usually there's equipment that's rated for 2 to 5-year-olds and 5 to 12-year-olds. A skate park amenity, you know, that would be all ages. So the fitness equipment could be all ages also.
I think we've gotten to pretty much everything. If you have another question, please feel free to type it in and we will get to it. Let me check.
Bonnie, I see in the chat that Brian, I hope I don't murder his last name, Riopel. He says that a signalized crosswalk at the school would be a much better option. I was under the impression that the crosswalk that is north towards the school is a signalized crosswalk. Am I wrong? And I hope people don't say, "Oh, haven't you visited the site?" Okay, it is signalized. Thank you. I thought it was. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. And thank you, Brian, for your comment.
And then Paula just asked, where can we find the concept? So great question. We're actually going to do a quick, just like in the moment vote here in a minute, just to kind of get your initial thoughts. Please know, none of these concepts are locked in. We're logging all of your notes. We're going to pull them for our files, which is the great thing about using Zoom, because we can have all this at our fingertips after the meeting. As I said, this meeting is also recorded, so we can go back and watch, and we can make it available for anyone in the neighborhood that couldn't attend. And then our plan is to build out that Gary Lane Park site website that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. So we'll be putting materials on there. I'll be working with our web team to put the concepts on there and just background information for those who couldn't attend tonight. And then as we move forward with next steps of feedback, because we plan on this being, you know, an ongoing conversation over the next few months, that's where you'll find all those materials. Also, you can always email us here at the Parks and Recreation office. That main line, and I'll put it in the chat, is bpr@cityofboise.org. And just make sure that you put in the subject line Gary Lane Park site. And sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time apparently. But that's the best way to get in front of this project team. Our customer service specialists at the front desk log every email that comes in, and they make sure that everything related to Gary Lane gets to Kelly and Trevor and me. So if in the coming days something pops up and you think, oh, I should have said this, or wouldn't this be great? Please feel free to reach out. Like I said, we're logging all of that feedback as well. And we always love to hear from you and get those. I know sometimes things spark days later after you come to one of these. So that's in the chat if you need it. We got one question from Stephen that I want to hit before we move on to the vote and then kind of next steps. So Stephen asked, what is the estimated future total annual cost for a park of this size? He said, assume concept 2. Also, what is the chance of any additional park money being made available in future years? I can probably take this one because I actually talked to our director about this today. The interesting thing about this park site is the money was funded via a decision by City Council, and it's all available this year. We can't guarantee that there's going to be any money available in the future for this site. That's why we really want to be authentic and hear you guys out on what you'd like to see. And as Kelly mentioned, the best chance for additional amenities in the future, obviously not guaranteed, but is through those investment grants. We could get into a long conversation about how our parks are funded, and it's usually on a multi-year basis. Like first it's the green up, then it's the amenities, and that's very spread out. This is unique in that we're doing it all at once. And so I think keeping that in mind is good. Let's really make the most of the budget that we have now and make sure that we create an awesome amenity for you guys that's gonna serve generations. So that's our goal. I know it's Kelly and Trevor's, and that's why we really wanted to start this conversation sooner rather than later, so we can get your feedback, create a really cool master plan, and get it out to bid so we can start construction. Before we get to timelines, wanted to check one more time. Oh, John said annual maintenance costs. It's pretty hard to say until we know exactly what the master plan is, right, Kelly?
Yeah, when we have a concept finalized, then we'll do all the takeoffs and be able to determine what the maintenance costs, annual maintenance costs will be.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen again. So this is some new technology for us. It's called Slido. I don't know if anyone has used it before, but I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint again. And this is interactive. If you have your phone nearby, that's definitely an option. Am I sharing my screen yet, guys?
No,
Yep. I was like, I missed a step there.
there it is.
There it is.
Okay. Okay, so this is Slido. It's live in real time. You don't need to log in or create a username. You can either use your phone. If you've been living in this COVID world, you've probably encountered QR codes for menus and things like that. Just hold open your photo app and scan that, and it should allow you to enter the poll, or you can put slido.com into your browser and use that PIN 8881-878 to also enter the poll and vote. Honestly, this is not official. This is not scientific in any means. We just kind of wanted to see if something stood out to you all as being a direction to work on, so that Kelly can go back and maybe create some different configurations. So we'd love your feedback. Please feel free to log in and take it. I'll give you a couple minutes to do so, and then maybe Trevor and Kelly, you can help me monitor for any last minute questions before I talk about next steps. I'm just glad to see it's working.
It's working. Yeah,
I learned about this week and thought that would be awesome for our Gary Lane meeting. So I wanted to try it.
I'm impressed. I'll jump in here. It looks like Linda Mikado said, what if a preferred concept is not one of the three that are shown here? Well, Bonnie will go over the timeline for gathering input, but these concepts are what they are. They're concepts. They're only just for a visualization of what could be. It could be a combination of all three. It could be none of the concepts that are shown here. That's why we're here tonight. We're taking in everybody's input. So yeah, if the concept is not one of the three, then it would be a fourth or a fifth concept. But as Bonnie will point out as we come to a close of the meeting, what the timeline is, we'll come back to folks with what we've heard later on and try to create either a fourth concept or a new concept that includes everybody's input, or at least tries to accommodate as much of everybody's input and desires as possible.
And yeah, I would say that's where, if you want to put some thoughts in the chat, I've seen a couple other people do that, and that's great. Or if you want to put your thoughts down and email us with that address, that's also a great way to do that. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple people excited this could be built out this year. Yeah, we are too. And like I said, this is rare, right, Kelly and Trevor? Like, we don't usually get a park approved and all the budget to do right away, right?
Yeah, approved, funded, and direction to go build it. So
yeah,
exciting.
If you build it. So yeah, we're excited too, and we think it's going to be an awesome new addition to our park system. And yeah, seeing a couple notes, Kelly, maybe seeing concept 2 with like a fitness station added, just so that parents can work out while their kids are on the playground, maybe working a couple different options into that.
Yeah, that would be an easy addition to make with the playground.
And then a couple asking if pickleball courts could potentially be added to one of the concepts. Okay, the voting's going to stay open. I can always come back to this slide, but I want to get to next steps and make sure that we don't take over the time that we've asked of you on this Thursday night. So let me pull this up. So next steps. We're going to analyze the information we've received tonight, and that includes what we've heard up until today. And then if you guys want to follow up with us and send any additional thoughts, you're more than welcome to. Kelly and Trevor will work on updating concepts, maybe coming up with some different ideas once we look through what the feedback is and kind of what you guys are liking. And then we're definitely going to be doing at least one more round, maybe two, honestly, just to try to make sure we hone in really, really solidly on what you guys would like to see, to get additional community feedback. With COVID, we've been doing a lot of online surveys, and it's been a great way to get broader participation and ask some really specific questions so that we can learn more about what the majority of people in the neighborhood would like to see. So we'll be working on that following this meeting, hopefully in some kind of aspect of voting on some concepts again, and then maybe some more questions getting to, would you like this park to have dog off leash? What different sport court you might like to see. If there's a playground, do you want it to be larger or smaller so that we can fit something else in? And please know that Kelly will be keeping budget in mind in all of this. So we'll definitely make sure that we're staying within our lane, and not, showing you anything that's going to be too out of the realm of possibility. And then we're hoping we can get this done in the next few months. I didn't want to put like a date on it because obviously we want to be, really authentic with you guys about what you want, and that may take some time to really nail down. So the goal is to take this to the Boise Parks and Rec Commission. Once we have a master plan that everybody feels good about, they will need to approve it. And if and when it's approved, that's then when we can go out to bid. We can start getting those in and start construction. And as you know, or may not know, the city's fiscal year ends at the end of September. So this money is available during this fiscal year 2022. So the goal is to break ground, start construction, start getting things built out, and make sure that we, are using that money really wisely. Kelly, do you have anything to add just about the construction or what people can expect as far as a timeline? Because you know this market better than me.
Yeah, depending on what amenities we choose, it's a challenging time right now for construction. Costs keep escalating quickly, and delays in materials are really a challenge right now. Like if we ordered a playground, a piece of equipment today, we'd be 4 to 5 months out. So that kind of gives you an idea of where that's going to put us for finishing construction. We'll have a lot of other work going on, but maybe the equipment will show up after the rest of the park's already been completed.
We're really doing our best. As you can imagine, in Parks and Rec, we have a lot of projects going on at any given time, and COVID has really been an interesting time. I see you nodding, Kelly. I work with all our park designers and our project managers, and yeah, it's definitely been something that's been interesting, but I know I speak for this whole team. We're really excited for this project. I can see from the chat that you guys are too. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen now as we wrap up. Yeah, thank you all for the kudos in the comments. And as I said, I'm going to put our contact information in the chat again. It's honestly the best way is to email us, bpr@cityofboise.org. And if you mention Gary Lane Park site, they'll know who to send that information to, which is the three of us. And I would also recommend again that you follow that Gary Lane Park site webpage. We'll be updating that with new information, posting this meeting so that people can watch it if they missed it. So feel free to let any friends and neighbors know who want to get the information that you all got here. And with that, unless Kelly or Trevor has anything else, I think we're done.
Thank you everyone for participating.
I really appreciate all the really thoughtful questions and fantastic input. I'm so appreciative that people are excited about this and that people have really given us some really meaningful things to think about, and just grateful. Thank you everybody for attending.
Yeah, I have to echo everything they're saying. It's interesting. We used to do these meetings, obviously in person. We would invite you all to come and stand in a room and talk with us face to face. And I, for one, missed that because it was nice to kind of make those connections. But I will say COVID changed a lot, and doing things virtually, we get a lot of participation that I think we may never have gotten before. So thank you for your hour. We appreciate your time, and we'll be keeping in touch with you as this project moves along. But again, we appreciate your feedback and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.